All right, so good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is our fifth session for the LLM webinar series. And my name is Juan Manuel Delgado. I am an EducationUSA advisor based at the Fulbright Commission in Lima, Peru. And today we have 7 of the finest law schools from the United States. And they will be talking about the differences between a JD and an LLM, as well as work experience. Just a couple of announcements to make. If you have any questions throughout the presentations, please make sure you put them in the chat. And second, after the event, the representatives will have individual Zoom rooms. So in case you're interested in a particular law school, make sure you check the chat out as well, because we'll be sharing the Zoom access links to those individual Zoom rooms through the chat function. So without further ado, I would like to invite Martin. Martin, thank you for being with us this afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm Martin Camp. I'm the Assistant Dean for Graduate and International Programs at SMU Dedman School of Law in Dallas, Texas. I practiced law for many, many years as a partner with Jones Day Law Firm, and I took early retirement to come back to SMU, where I graduated and was Dean of Students for 10 years, and now I'm Dean of Graduate and International Programs. So my job is working with students who are interested in studying in the United States, and we're all here today to help you, and we're excited about talking to you about options for study that include either the LLM or the JDs. So my part is going to be asking you to ask yourself a question and helping you decide, which is, which degree is right for me? So let's look at our next slide. So the LLM Masters of Law is the typical degree that most international students who want to study in the United States do if they've already gotten their law degree in their home country. This LLM, because it's a master's, could be either a general LLM or it could be a specialty LLM. And a general LLM can qualify you to take a bar exam in the United States, in states like New York or Texas or California or other states. And if you pass the exam and you meet the other requirements, you can qualify to practice in the United States. It's also recognized by employers around the world as a mark of distinction. You have 2 law degrees. It sets you apart from most lawyers who have just 1 law degree in their home country. It means you understand 2 legal systems, and it means that you have this ability to function in 2 languages, and that can be very valuable. Many schools will offer a specialty LLM in areas such as tax or environmental law or human rights, and maybe you are particularly interested in one of those areas. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges of that in a minute. But most LLMs are usually a 2-semester, a 1-year program. Most of them are going to be in person. Some may be online, and we'll talk a little bit about some challenges with those courses. Let's see at the next slide. So with the American JD, in the United States, unlike most countries, law is a graduate degree. And so whereas you study in your undergraduate to be a lawyer in your country, in the United States, American students can get a bachelor's degree in just about anything: business, literature, history, political science, dance, philosophy. The JD then is after they get their bachelor's degree and is usually 3 more additional hours. So it takes a year. It takes about 7 years in the United States. International students who obtain a JD are able to sit for a bar exam and obtain a law license in the US the same way that other American law students who get a JD are. And an international student doesn't have to have a law degree in their home country if they want to apply for the JD. Now, one of our other speakers is going to discuss the whole admissions process and what you have to do if you want to directly apply to a JD from your country. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, yeah. So here's some questions you should ask yourself. Why do I want to study law in another country? What are my long-term career goals? Where do I want to practice law, and what kind of law do I want to practice? How will a foreign law degree help me reach my goals? How much time am I able or willing to commit to reach these goals? How much money and financial resources am I willing and able to invest? And do I first want to pursue an LL.M and later a JD? These are good questions to ask and analyze. And the answer is really your answer. You're the only person who's going to know that. But let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's look at the next slide. Should I pursue the JD if I already have a law degree? Okay, so here's the thing. A law degree in your home country is usually required for admission to an LL.M program because it is a Master's of Law. A law degree is not required to pursue the JD. But if you have a law degree in your home country and you also do an LL.M, there are still some benefits to obtaining a JD. First, if you want to pass a bar exam, it's easier if you studied 3 years in a JD than it is 1 year in an LL.M. In addition, an American JD program offers more options for you to participate in the law school life. Clinics, externships, summer employment clerkships, law reviews, appellate advocacy programs. All of these things are kind of part of the 3-year American JD experience that you're not able to do all of those things in a 2-semester LL.M. Let's look at the next slide. Some advantages of the JD. The JD program offers more career opportunities. You'll be a fully US trained lawyer with 3 years to seek employment opportunities, just like the American JD students. Some law firms and employers may prefer or require a JD, and some recruiting programs, such as summer clerkships, are offered to JD students for the summer after their 2nd year. Now, your command of the English language will also be just that much better the longer that you study. And if you have a law degree in your home country, some employers may find you particularly attractive because of your knowledge of both legal systems and your additional language abilities. Next slide. But in the final analysis, only you know the answers. My dad always told me that the most important person in your life is you. And even the golden rule says, love your neighbor as yourself, not more than or instead of yourself. This will be your life and your career. And this is the spring season of your life. It is the time to invest in yourself. And it's often easier now before the pressures of the world, work, family, make it more difficult to study abroad. And I can assure you that studying in the United States will be life-changing. You will meet and have a chance to form lifelong friendships with other international and American students that you'll carry with you all of your life. Next slide. Making the choice right. Life is a series of tunnels and chambers. Law school is a tunnel, and you need to do your best so that when you finish and this tunnel opens up into a chamber, it's going to have other tunnels and other choices, and you want to have the maximum number of options. And this is going to be true over the whole course of your life. You're going to make many career decisions. You're going to go down many tunnels. Law students sometimes become paralyzed with the fear of not making the right choice. But in my experience, most of the time, it's not about making the right choice. It's about making the choice right. And how do we do that? By giving it 100% and not second guessing your decision. Next slide. So in conclusion of my part, we are all here to be resources and mentors as you plan your legal career. Only you know the right path for you. This is the time to invest in yourself, the springtime of your life. So let your adventure begin. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker.
Hi, everyone. My name is June Sakamoto. I'm the Senior Assistant Dean for Enrollment Management at UC Hastings Law in San Francisco. My computer keeps telling me that my Wi-Fi is unstable. It's not me who's unstable, hopefully, but the Wi-Fi is. Luckily, I only have 2 slides here, so hopefully I can get through it before takes over all of the Wi-Fi in all of San Francisco. Alice, if you could move forward, please. So I'm here to talk about sort of the nuts and bolts of the differences between applying to a JD program and an LLM program. As Martin mentioned, a bachelor's degree of any field is accepted for the Juris Doctor, whereas for the LLM, for international lawyers in particular, I'll mention just LLM programs generally, a first degree in law if you are a foreign attorney. So most countries have an LL.B degree, occasionally a master's degree without a master's degree in law without an LL.B degree could also be accepted. If people are interested in an LLM in a specific field, the prerequisites vary. So you should definitely check with your with the law school that you're interested to see what their required educational throughout. All law schools are similar, but not the same. So if you do have any questions, I highly encourage you to reach out to each individual law school to ask the questions that you need. I promise you that admissions people at law schools are incredibly nice and friendly, and you will see that here, and we want you to succeed. So please reach out if you have any questions. So the application process is any LLM program similar in one respect, in that LSAC.org is the big umbrella organization that governs law school admissions, and students would create an account there. It is free to create an account, so I encourage you to just go in and see what lsac.org has to offer. They have a lot of resources to compare Juris Doctor programs and to let you know which programs, LLM programs are available. So take a look at that. For the LLM side, there are law schools that accept applications outside of LSAC. I will note that the benefit of using LSAC is if you are applying to multiple law schools, then act as sort of the general holding area for all of your materials. So to get your transcripts, your letters of recommendation, you would just have everybody send their documents to LSAC one time, and then LSAC will send those documents out to every school that you are applying. If you are applying to a school individually and maybe another school, you will be required to have your letters of recommendation sent directly from the writer to each individual school. My internet is still unstable, so hopefully I'm still coming through. You will also know from your undergraduate institution and your graduate institutions separately to each school. The downside for LSAC is that they do charge fees that most of us are not able to waive, so there is a cost associated with LSAC. The personal statement, the transcripts, the letters of recommendation, and your CV or resume are really similar for JD and LLM programs, but again, everybody is a little bit different. So that personal statement prompt that they want you to answer, and some are really general. So make sure you're answering the question that the law school is asking of you. Also, just you've had a week-long sort of seminar series of this, so I'm sure you've heard it many times, but just a few tips on the personal statement. I promise you that admissions committees read every single word on your application. We love you are sort of broadly what you're able to present to us. So we do look at your resume, we look at your CV. So for that personal statement, do not sort of do a timeline again of everything that you've already told us in your resume. A lot of law schools do have interviews, but a lot of schools don't. So this is our chance for us to get to know who you are as a person, and we so this personal statement is the opportunity for us to know who you are. One other tip for that personal statement is you should sort of focus on who you are and what you are hoping to get out of the program. But it's incredibly helpful to admissions committees to know why it is that you're interested in our law school in particular, and that a year of your life or longer going to an LLM program is a big financial and personal and professional commitment for you. And we want to make sure that our law school has all the resources that you are looking for to succeed. So to the extent that you can write about, you know, in my case, what UC Hastings Law in San Francisco has to offer you in particular, and what you have to offer us, that's incredibly helpful to admissions committees. Standardized tests. So this and the English proficiency are the biggest differences between applying for the Juris Doctor program and the LLM program. For the JD program, you are required to take the LSAT exam or the GRE in for some schools. You may be hearing the buzz that the American Bar Association is considering getting rid of any kind of testing. That is not going to happen for a while. So if it does happen at all, so you would need to sit for the LSAT or the GRE exam. For LLM programs, however, test required, the LSAT, the GRE, any other standardized test you can think of, they're not generally required for the LLM. But the English proficiency test is. So for the JD, most programs do not require a TOEFL, because if you have gotten an LSAT or a GRE score, we know that your English has to be up to a certain level. But for LLM programs, there is. Here is another place where you should talk to the law schools that you're interested in. The minimum required scores individual institution, you should be able to find it on the website. And also the tests accepted also vary from law school to law school. Most will accept the TOEFL, many will accept the TOEFL Essentials, some might accept Duolingo, some might accept IELTS, some might accept Cambridge. So really make sure that you're taking the that you're interested in requires. And lastly, on this slide, many schools have financial assistance and scholarships available. What you need to do to be eligible for those scholarships is different. I will say that for Juris Doctor programs, there are many external scholarships available to people who are interested in the Juris Doctor. And organization called Access Lex. They have an external database of all the scholarships available for mostly Juris Doctor students. If you're interested in an LLM, you should definitely take a look. Again, it's called Access Lex, but most of the scholarships are geared towards JD students. The good news for LLM students is that most law schools don't require a separate application to be considered for a scholarship. Many law schools will offer merit-based scholarships based on the strength of your application. So definitely go to schools' websites and take a look at what the requirements. All right, and this is my last slide. It's the JD versus LLM timelines. For the JD and the LLMs, generally the program is the same. I see that I made a little bit of an error in the LLM side. For JDs, JD programs start in the fall. So you would process, you could open the application the fall before you would like to start. So generally August or September of the year before. Here on the LLM side, I also say the same thing, early fall. There are actually some programs that start in January as well, January and August starts. So you should take a look to see when the application opens if you are interested in a January start. Generally late spring to early summer for the Juris Doctor. For the LLM program, there are programs that will open and have rolling admissions, which means, you know, as soon as an application is complete, the admissions committee will make a decision. So after you go through your submit your application. There are law schools, though, that have firm deadlines, so mid-December or early January. And in those situations, you really do want to get all of your materials in by the stated deadline. And many of those schools will then have a date by which they will let you know if you are admitted. All of this information, again, should be on the website. But if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to the admissions committees or admissions offices at the law schools that you're interested in. And then program start dates, generally August through August, and then it'll end in May. For the January starts, I would have to, we don't have one, so I think it's January. Well, I won't even venture to guess, but it'll be a year starting in January. And the JD program is a 3-year program. LLM programs are generally 1 year. There are many programs out there that also have sort of a pre-English program. There are programs that will allow you to take 1 or after the year. Most of that information also should be on the website. And the last thing I wanted to mention is there are many LLM programs in the US where you would start as an LLM student, and then you have the option to apply to transfer to the JD program. One of the benefits is that, you know, to get into an LLM program, you do not need to take the LSAT or you are admitted based on the quality of the application, based on your experience to date. And then you can apply to transfer to the JD program without having to take one of those tests. And the other benefit is that you are able to transfer your LLM credits to the JD. So you can complete your LLM and your JD in generally the 3 years that it would have taken. So if that is something you're interested in, definitely reach out to law schools to see if they have that option for you, and once you start a program and this is something you're interested in, talk to your academic advisors very early on to let them know that you are interested in this transfer process, because there are certain classes that you should be taking, certain minimum GPAs that you want to hit, and you just want to know what all of that is in advance. Okay, hopefully my Wi-Fi lasted long enough for this. It was great talking to you, and I'll see you in my room later.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Schwartz. I'm the Assistant Director of Graduate Admissions here at the University of Connecticut School of Law. I'm located in Hartford, Connecticut, which is in the northeast of the United States. We're conveniently located right between the major cities of New York and Boston. And at UConn Law, we have 5 specialized LLM programs that I'm happy to tell you about later in my Zoom room. But right now, I'm going to transition to the part of our presentation where we're talking about gaining work experience during law school. So I'll specifically be talking about clinics and externships. Next slide, please. So the first question is, why complete a clinic or an externship? Well, these are 2 types of non-classroom experiences that we tend to refer to as experiential learning, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's learning through experiences as contrasted with classroom learning. In general, a clinic or an externship can be done as part of either a JD or an LLM program, though this might vary based on the university, so you will want to check with them. Some other terms that you might hear are practical learning or practice-based learning, so you can look out for those as well. And so the advantages to clinics or externships are that while a classroom trains you to think like a lawyer and gives you theory, experiential learning gives you real-world legal experience and helps you to put your classroom learning into practice. So you'll have the chance to develop your legal knowledge, skills, and professional identities while practicing law. So you can see what you enjoy doing, see what you excel at, and do all of this while you're still completing your degree. It's also a great opportunity to make connections that can possibly help you with your job search after graduation. It's an opportunity for networking with local lawyers or at local companies close to the law school where you are, who might be able to help you or to provide references in the future when you're seeking employment after graduation. So clinics and externships, and I will get into the difference between the two, are for course credit. So what that means is that they're part of your academic program. So you're getting credits towards either your LL.M or your JD degree, and they're not paid work. So that's an important distinguishing factor to know about, but we will talk more about paid opportunities a little bit later. So depending on how many hours of your clinic or your field placement that you're completing, you will get a certain number of credits towards your law degree. A typical field placement at UConn Law might be a day and a half a week of work at your field placement or your externship for about 3 to 4 credits. So that's a typical amount of time translated to a number of credits. Some might be longer, however. We have some clinics where students are working practically full-time, where they're working 30 hours a week, and they're gaining 9 course credits in the process. So it really depends, and you'll want to check in with your different law schools to see what they offer. In addition, different law schools all offer different opportunities. At UConn Law, we have 13 different clinics and 6 field placement programs. Different universities all have different offerings, so do check in with schools to see what is offered as you're going through your application process. Next slide, please. So first, let's talk about clinics. And what is a clinic? Well, a clinic is essentially a small law firm. Often they are operated by the law school itself, which is called an in-house clinic, or it could be operated by an outside organization. And I'll give you some examples of this later. During a clinic, students receive teaching and supervision by full-time professors at the law school or by lawyers. So it's a great opportunity to receive mentorship, as many students are working very closely with their clinical supervisors. And so you'll get to have their input on your work and get to form a closer relationship with them as well. Clinics serve a variety of community needs, which is one great thing about them. So not only are clinics providing training to students, but they're also a great service to the community around the law school. So for example, at UConn Law, we have a housing and eviction defense clinic where students are interviewing and counseling local clients who are facing eviction or housing loss and representing them in court. We also have, for example, a tax clinic, which gives free legal help to low-income taxpayers with tax problems. And every year, this clinic represents over 100 clients from our local area. So clinics are a great way to also give back to the community where you're doing your law degree. And the real advantage to clinics, which sets them apart, is that you gain experience with real clients. So this is not a simulation, this is not classroom training. You're actually representing and working with clients, of course, under supervision. But in that vein, you'll be gaining invaluable skills like interpersonal and communication skills, cultural competency skills, or even being able to use your language skills depending on the population that you're working with. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, in-house clinics are clinics that are housed at the law school itself and staffed by full-time professors at the law school. And I've just put some examples of the in-house clinics that we have here at UConn Law so that you can see some examples of what this might look like. Oftentimes, the clinics at a law school will correspond to the areas of expertise of the faculty at that law school. So you'll want to check in based on your particular interests to see which schools offer clinics that you might be interested in. And just as an example, At UConn Law School, we have an LL.M in human rights and social justice. And so we have faculty members working in this area. And they also run our asylum and human rights clinic, where students are able to represent asylum cases in Connecticut. So that's an example of a correlation between one of our LL.M programs and the clinics that are offered here. Next slide, please. And then I mentioned that some schools may have partnership clinics as well. And what this means is simply that the clinic is not run at the law school, but that we partner with local agencies where students can also complete a clinic. Students are still representing clients at these placements, but you're working through an outside organization rather than at the law school itself. And at UConn Law, we have 6 partnership clinics, and I've put some examples up here. For example, the Center for Children's Advocacy. We have a local nonprofit called Save the Sound that works in the area of energy and environmental law, Disability Rights Connecticut, and the Connecticut Veterans Legal Center are just some examples. Next slide, please. So now that I've spoken a bit about clinics, let's talk about externships. And you may have heard me use the term field placement as well, because at UConn Law, we actually call our externships field placements, but it means the same thing. And it's essentially a temporary training program that's in a workplace. So you're going to a workplace, a company, an agency, a vast variety of places where you can gain legal experience. So I've put some examples here. You might be in government offices, you might be in corporate in-house legal departments, you could be in a private law firm, any kind of legal setting where you're gaining work experience. And so a law school might have partnerships with certain employers where students regularly complete externships or field placements. And so the law school will help place you in some of these partnership agencies or offices that we have relationships with. In addition, you may have the opportunity to seek out an individual field placement or something that you've come up with on your own, somewhere that you really want to work that hasn't previously been a field placement at your law school, but often there is someone at the law school who can help you find these individualized placements and that works in that area. So for example, we have a director of field placements here at UConn Law who can help students seek out individual field placements if we don't have a partner with the type of place where you would like to work. And in addition, often field placements include a classroom or seminar component to enhance and broaden your experience, where you can talk about what you're seeing during your externship or field placement experience with a professor at the law school. Next slide, please. So here are some examples of field placements where students may work. In the past, we've had students do field placements at the Center for Energy and Environmental Law, especially students who are in our environmental law LL.M. Since we're located in a state capital, we are the seat of the state legislature. So we have people working in legislative offices as well as the state's attorney's office. And so just to give you an example from a student who we had here last semester, he was doing his LL.M in US legal studies, and he had a particular interest in constitutional law. He was able to get an externship at the governor's office here in Hartford, working specifically with the general counsel of the governor. So he was talking to me about how his internship experience was really great because he was right in the middle of the action. He was able to advise the governor about the constitutionality of various legislation that was being presented to him. He did a lot of legal research pertaining to the questions at hand. And for him, it opened up a lot of new insights, not just about how the law works and about constitutional law, but also how governments work. And I think that's a common thread with different field placement experiences, is that you're getting legal experience, but you're also getting an insight into whatever work environment that you're entering into. In particular, as a foreign trained attorney, you're getting experience in an American work environment. So this can be really invaluable experience. So that is all for my part of the presentation, and I will hand it over to our next presenter.
Great, thank you. So, as participants in this session, you've heard a lot about different opportunities to gain some practical experience in the application process. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of those other elements that can help you when it comes to deciding between which JD or LLM program you'd like to pursue. So my name is Sarah Gonzalez. I'm Director of Graduate Programs at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. When it comes to looking at your extracurricular activities, many of the law schools will give you different opportunities to network and connect with the field. Whether if you're doing a general LLM program or if you're doing a specialized topic LLM program, some of those opportunities will vary depending on if the specialized program, they may have access to specialized conferences or events. General programs will probably give you some other activities, but I'll give you some examples that are on the next slide. And so when it comes to some of these extracurricular activities, I would think about conferences and symposiums. And these may be events that your law school is hosting as the host in a particular area, or a faculty that maybe specializes in IP law, or it could be general conferences and symposiums that are in a professional field. So in the photos, you'll see examples. At UNLV, we're a gaming law program, so we have a couple students on the top right that attended a local gaming conference and an anti-money laundering conference, but there are specialized topic conferences that are in the region that students can get access to either free or a nominal cost. So I would check, even as a prospect now, you could go to the universities that you're looking at, look at their upcoming events and see what events, the type of events they're hosting to figure out some of these professional activities that may help you with some of the networking outside of an academic program. Some law schools may host similar to what you've seen in those in-house or clinic opportunities, but in a much shorter time frame, or community law days. This may be a one-day activity where the law school will have the law students help with some aspect that the community or public needs help with. And so in the past, our law school has done help where they needed Spanish speakers to help some of the hospitality employees better understand their labor contracts. And so these community law days are opportunities to kind of give back to the local community in a very more informal format, not a full semester commitment, but more of a one day or event opportunity for law schools to really connect with the local community surrounding a particular issue. Or the law school may arrange visits to the courts. It may be part of an academic course or program, or maybe it's an introduction to US law where you understand the theory to it, and then you may visit the court later on that day. I know for my program, I organize field trips where I will take students into some of the casinos and talk with the sports betting organizers or something about responsible gaming. But there may be those opportunities to gain professional networking and really better understand a particular area of law that your school may organize. It could be, if you go over to the next slide, there are other opportunities to also get involved that may be through student clubs or organizations. And so many of the law schools that you'll see will offer a series of clubs and organizations that may be very specific to the JD program or specific to an LLM program, or be open to both populations of both JD and LLM students. And some may be centered around certain demographic or religious or special interest areas, and some may be intramural sports. There's one organization, if you'll see on the top right, that organized goat yoga, and that's actually our assistant dean of students that's being used as a sample with the goat on top. And so some of these are opportunities to really connect with the local community, with other law students that are in your class. Some of them, like you see in the photo in the middle, are students that were selected to go to Washington, D.C. with our Senator Jackie Rosen, who's in the middle of that photo. And so there are opportunities to really deeper understand a particular area of law or legislative action, or opportunity to really connect socially with some of the other students, whether it be more of a formal event. That's on the bottom right. You'll see on the bottom middle and the bottom right, there carving pumpkins. So it could be something that's part of a US American experience where you get to experience one of the traditions of Halloween, or on the bottom left, you'll see students had gotten together to go bowling. And so connecting with some of the student clubs and organizations is a good way to really help that transition into US legal education and build a sense of community while you're in a JD or LLM program. And then the next slide. You'll also see that many of the law schools are built as part of a larger university. And so you may have law school events through those student orgs, but the university as a whole may have other events as well that you can experience some of American culture. There are several teams here on this call with universities that have very large football teams, American football, don't confuse it with the World Cup going on right now, but where you can watch some of those larger sports that happen at the events, or some of these spiritual cheerleading events that are kind of unique to the United States. There may be opportunities for you to get involved with the larger community with a local hike or boating activity, or with service days where you'll see on the bottom right where students have gotten together to do a cleanup in a local community park or a local area. So some of the larger university activities are another opportunity to connect not just with law students, but realistically with some of the undergraduate, graduate students, and get to know really the local community. Part of you deciding to do an LLM or JD program is also the location in which you're deciding to pursue your degree program. And these university events can be a great opportunity to really get to know the city or the state that you're involved in, that you chose to do your LLM in. And so I would really encourage students that are going through and earning a JD or LLM to really also look at some of these larger university events to really connect themselves with the local community and with the local students. And then from there, I think I'm going to pass it on to my next colleague to go over some of the employment opportunities.
Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. So my name is Alice Chu, and I am the Director of Graduate Admissions at the University of Michigan Law School in Ann Arbor, Michigan, right in the center of the United States. And as Sarah mentioned, I will be discussing the possibility of working during your LLM year. So just to be clear, as an international student, chances are that you'll enter the United States on a student visa for your LLM program. And there are restrictions on your eligibility to work if you enter the United States on a student visa, because federal government regulations require international students to be in the United States for the primary purpose of attending school, not to work. But as a general matter, international students are permitted to work in on-campus jobs for a maximum of 20 hours per week during the academic term. During term breaks, full-time on-campus employment is allowed, but you should just note that breaks tend to be quiet periods at law schools and universities, and so on-campus work opportunities may be limited during breaks. To be clear, on-campus employment does not have to be related to your field of study. So this means there is a really wide range in the types of work that you can do, and they do not have to be related to law. So this means it can be possible to work as a research or teaching assistant at your law school or in another university department, but really the scope of possibilities is a lot broader. You may be able to work in your law schools or university libraries, administrative offices, residence halls and dormitories, dining halls. If you're a barista, you could work at a university cafe. If you're into fitness, you could work at an on-campus gym, computing services, conference and event services, and more. Really think about all of the types of work that help a school run smoothly, and then chances are there may be on-campus employment opportunities for students. All of this covers the outer bounds of what is possible in terms of working during your LLM year. But this brings us to the question of whether it's a good idea to work during your LLM year in the first place. And there are a couple of factors to think about when making this decision. So first, I do want to note that individual schools may differ in their policies on allowing students to work during their LLM year. So at Michigan Law, we understand that students may want to work part-time during their LLM year to help cover the cost of attendance. But we do have a universal policy of strongly discouraging students from taking on significant work responsibilities during the LLM program. And as you've seen from this webinar, the LLM provides you with a ton of opportunities to be involved both in and out of the classroom. And your LLM year is a really exciting and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be fully immersed in life in the US. But all that said, an LLM is a rigorous and demanding a course load. And so although your LLM year is fun and fulfilling, most, if not all, students do experience periods of adjustment. So because of this, at Michigan, we advise our LLM students to minimize external pressures and responsibilities as much as they can, especially during the first semester. Some of our LLM students may work in on-campus jobs after they complete the first semester of the LLM program. This is when they have a more solid sense of the LLM course load. And so they may be able to take on some work responsibilities during their second semester. But if they do so, the time commitment is minimal. So usually no more than 5 to 10 hours per week. And because the time is minimal, to be frank, the pay is also minimal as well. So on-campus employment can be a source of covering costs for a nice cup of coffee or a dinner out on the weekend. But at Michigan, our LLM students should not rely on employment during their LLM year as a source of funding. Now, in terms of when you should think about searching for on-campus employment opportunities, usually you should wait until you begin classes in your LLM program to start looking for these opportunities. Being on campus is usually the best way, or puts you in the best position to start looking for these kinds of opportunities. So the bright side is that you don't have to worry about thinking about on-campus employment at this point. You can wait until you're actually at the point of being on campus and starting your LLM classes. But I also want to note that really on-campus employment opportunities vary widely school by school. So it's always a good idea to check in with any schools that you might be thinking about in terms of the types of opportunities that are available and also their policies on on-campus employment. So now that concludes my portion of the webinar. And so now I'll hand it over to John from Temple.
Great, thank you so much, Alice. And thank you, Alice, for all the work you did in preparing for today. And of course, Juan, thank you for all the arrangements. And greetings to everyone from Philadelphia. We're located in between New York and Washington, but we're perhaps best known in Brazil for Rocky Balboa and the Rocky series that was filmed here. Hola a todos, me chamo João. É prazer conhecer a todos vocês. Me desculpe, eu não falo bem português. I know that many students who come to the United States to earn an LLM are very interested in taking a bar exam to become licensed lawyers in the United States. So next slide, please, Alice. So what is a bar exam? And the bar exam is, unlike Brazil, which only has one national bar exam, in the United States, we have different bar exams for each state and territory. So they're administered by state governments, and there is no federal or national bar exam. So most state bar exams are 2 days, but some states have a 3-day bar exam, and they test a range of subjects on US law, contracts, property, tort, criminal law, others as well. So it's a range of subjects taught or tested over 2 or 3 days. In order to become a licensed lawyer in the United States, we must pass the bar exam, and then we become admitted to the bar and licensed to practice in that state. Now, not everyone working in the legal profession has taken a bar exam. There are many other legal jobs that do not require that exam, such as a paralegal or a translator, or jobs that are not providing legal services, even though we have a law degree. So it's just for the licensed lawyers to be able to practice law and advise clients where there is that requirement to take a bar exam to be able to work in the legal profession in that way. Next slide, please, Alice. So not all states will permit LLM students to take the bar exam. So that's another difference between the JD and the LLM, because JD graduates are eligible to take the bar exam in all 50 states and territories, whereas the LLM students can take the bar exam in most states, but they may have to have certain home school requirements, legal education requirements, as well as additional requirements as the state may require. But for specific information on a state you might be interested in, the National Conference for Bar Examiners provides a comprehensive chart with each state bar exam's eligibility requirements. And I placed in the slide here the web address for the National Conference of Bar Examiners. Most LLM students that I know have taken the bar exams in California, New York, Washington, and Wisconsin, although there are many other states that do allow LLM graduates to take the bar exam. And again, for more information, the website that I've provided here will provide the detailed requirements for any given state. You need not attend law school in the state where the bar exam is offered. So for example, Temple is in Philadelphia, which is located in the state of Pennsylvania. So we have had graduates take the Pennsylvania bar exam, but we've also had plenty of graduates take the New York bar exam or the California bar exam. So you do not need to attend law school in the state where the bar exam is being offered. And again, to know more about what the requirements are, what other educational requirements they have, or what US LLM coursework they could require. Again, that's all on the website. All of us here today representing our schools are aware that students primarily take the New York and California bar exams, and we have the courses and the curriculum required for those exams. And we work with each of our students to make sure that you're taking the proper courses if your goal is to take a bar exam. And so the website, again, will explain more, but once you're admitted into an LLM program, we will each work with you individually to make sure that you have the right qualifications and coursework needed for the, at least to prepare for the exam. But again, students at the end must make their own decisions and look at the independent requirements for any given state. So next slide, please, Alice. So when is the bar exam? And so that should help you with your own academic planning. The bar exam is offered twice a year in each state, usually the last week of February and the last week of July. So if you enter an LLM program in August of one year, you'll graduate the following May. And then if you wish to take the bar exam in July of that year, you should be eligible to do so. Again, it's important to understand what the application requirements are, because you have to begin the application process for the bar exam much earlier. However, again, the schools will each work with you and put you in contact as well, if need be, with the bar examiners for your specific case. If you enter a program that allows spring admission, where you graduate the following December, then perhaps the first bar exam you could take would be in February after that. Although there's no requirement that you take the bar exam right away. So if you graduate in May, but wish to take the exam the following February, you can do so. So there's no requirement that you take the bar exam immediately after law school. And in fact, I have had graduates from Temple's LLM program who graduated 10, 15 years ago, and then they decide to take, say, the New York bar exam 15 years later, and that's usually fine. Again, if there's no other issues with their application as decided by the bar examiners. But as I understand it, there's not many restrictions on how far ago you study your degree versus taking the exam. So that's just something to be aware of as far as timing. But most students that I work with here at Temple, when they graduate in May, they take the July bar exam, and then the students who graduate in December usually take the February bar exam. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're thinking about timing. Next slide, please, Alice. So how do you prepare for the bar exam? And one thing to understand is that an LLM program is not a bar exam preparation course. They're two very different things. Law school is designed to help you with your skills, with your analytical thinking, with your writing, with your communication, and your understanding of case analysis, to just prepare you for the mindset needed to be a lawyer. Some of those things are relevant to the bar exam, but not all. And in fact, some of the exam taking that you'll do in law school, issue spotting, essay exams, even some of the other kinds of testing that we do are related to the bar exam, and you'll be developing those skills. But again, we are not bar preparation courses. However, there's a number of commercial organizations and bar preparation companies that offer comprehensive courses for JD and for LLM students. And so almost every JD student that I know and every LLM student that I know who takes the bar will take a bar preparation course. It's very difficult to self-study for, even though you can, but those who do take these courses tend to do very well. So I'm not endorsing any of these three companies, but I do know that our LLM students have taken the LLM specific bar review courses offered by Barbary, offered by Kaplan, and offered by Themis, and have had success in taking the exam. So this is just a common feature of all law students' experiences, is to take the bar exam, that they take a bar prep course through one of these companies. Usually the companies have representatives at the law schools where you can meet and talk with them about their specific products, and they have both in-person and online courses that you can explore as well. They usually will give you feedback on your essay exams. They'll give you suggestions on how to improve your performance on the multiple choice sections. So that's usually the experience that law students have when they prepare for the bar exam. So that, in a nutshell, is what the bar exam is. Whether or not you're eligible, I've given you the website where you can check against your specific circumstances, and you can also contact the Board of Bar Examiners to ask questions about your circumstances if you have any questions about your eligibility. I've explained when the bar exams are, and finally, the steps that you can take to prepare for them. So thank you very much to everyone, and you can then begin to prepare for the bar exam while you're in the US, very often during your period of OPT after. And on that note, I will turn the presentation over to my colleague, Nicole, who will speak about OPT. Thank you very much, everyone. Muito obrigado.
Thank you so much, John. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Fonsale. I'm the Assistant Director of Graduate Studies here at the University of California, Los Angeles School of Law. I'm also an alum of the program myself, coming originally from South Africa and graduating in 2019. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what you can get up to work-wise after you finish your LLM. And your main vehicle for doing that will be through the optional practical training. So if I can move on to the next slide, Alice, thank you. I'm just going to go through the who, what, where, and why of it all, starting off with the reasons why you might consider taking an optional practical training. So I'll refer to it as the OPT for ease of reference sake, and it's not something that you're required to take. Many LLM students after they graduate choose not to make use of it. But if you are considering or looking to have some kind of practical experience working in the US after you finish your LLM degree, this is how you're going to go about it for the first year. So if you are wanting to take on an internship, volunteer work, any kind of placement after you graduate, you're going to need to have an OPT. So as I mentioned, you can go through internships, unpaid positions, volunteer work, as well as paid employment. It will help you grow your international network, particularly your network of practitioners in the United States, potentially in the state you studied in, or if you move to work in a different state, then you're expanding your network even more so. And it is possibly a way to serve as a stepping stone to longer term employment in the United States. That is something that is really challenging. And I want to be very clear that it is going from OPT to long-term employment is not guaranteed. It involves a lot of effort and motivation on your part. But it is, if that is a goal of yours, one way you can seek to achieve that goal is by using the OPT. And I just want to flag that this OPT is necessary for any kind of post-graduation work. So if you want to spend the summer after you graduate volunteering for an organization that you're interested in or that you came to know during your studies, you're going to have to get your OPT to do so. If you go on a short summer teaching fellowship somewhere in the US, you're going to need your OPT to do so. So if you're even thinking of taking shorter practical opportunities after you graduate, you're going to need the OPT to do so. So those are some reasons why you might need it. I'm going to look into exactly what it is. So this OPT is an opportunity for you to extend your F1 student visa for up to 12 months after you graduate. You need to be doing practical work in your field of study, so within the legal field. And the OPT visa is sponsored by the university that you do your LL.M degree with. So it isn't tied to an employer. It will allow you to work anywhere in the United States. And there's no minimum duration. So you don't need to acquire a 12-month contract in order to be eligible for the OPT. Like I said, if you're even considering short summer work, that's something that you would then access through the OPT. And it's also not limited to one employer. So you could potentially take on multiple short positions with different internships, different volunteer opportunities over the course of your OPT, because it is linked to your school. So it's a great way to potentially explore a lot of different practical work within the US after you graduate. Next slide, please. Great. So the who is quite simple. LL.M students on an F1 visa are eligible for the OPT. If you're coming in on a J1, you are not eligible. It's a completely different process. It is not limited to a particular university in the US. It's not something that only certain schools have. Any school that you pursue your LL.M through, you will then be able to take the OPT option because it is linked to your F1 visa that you need to take up your studies in the US. The one exception is if you have previously held an OPT status at the same degree level, even if it's in a different field as the degree level you're studying now, you won't be able to take another OPT. So for example, if you've previously done an MBA and held OPT following the MBA, you won't then be able to take the OPT option after your LL.M. So that's something to consider if you have pursued different master's degrees in the States in the past and made use of the OPT. Next slide. So this is some of the technical stuff. And it's quite far in advance of when you would actually need to start doing the nuts and bolts of getting your OPT going. You are able to apply for your OPT. The earliest is 90 days before your date of graduation for the LL.M. The latest, you don't want to leave it later than 21 days before your LL.M ends. If you leave it later than that and the USCIS doesn't get your application in time, you won't be able to be approved for your OPT. So you don't want to leave it too late. When you apply for your OPT, you do not already need to have an offer of employment. So this again goes back to the fact that it's linked to your F1 visa and not to the employer. So you can start your OPT application while you're still studying before you've had a chance to secure particular employment after you graduate. So then something to consider is USCIS can take 90 to 150 days to issue a decision, which is why you want to get your OPT application in as soon as possible. Thinking about finding your OPT application, not your application, employment is a little bit different than the application procedure. In terms of contacting your employers, you want to start networking from the day you arrive for the start of your LL.M program. Also really important if you are considering and you're wanting to make use of the OPT to, as soon as you arrive, get in contact with your LL.M career advisor or the Office of Career Services, whatever LL.M career service support is available at your school. It might be within the Office of Graduate Studies, it might be a separate office. But if you're looking to have post-graduation work experience, you want to speak with them immediately as soon as possible, because depending on your background, there will be different things to consider, different steps that you need to take. So you want to get in contact with them as soon as possible and start working on your network from day one in terms of securing your employment. Then your OPT period, the start date is set by your application. So you can then determine what your OPT start date is. On completion of your LL.M degree, through your F1 visa, you are allowed to lawfully remain in the US for 60 days after that date of graduation. So you can set your OPT start date as soon as the day after you graduate, or as many as 60 days after you graduate. So that would be set through your OPT application. So that's maybe, I hope that information is clear. And then from that, when you start working, so you effectively have 150 days from the end of your LL.M program to find an employer for your OPT. So I mentioned the 60-day window. You have 60, you can start your OPT, have day one be 60 days after you graduate. And from the first day of your OPT, you then have 90 days where you can be unemployed on your OPT visa. So that gives you 150 days from the date of graduation to find employment, whether it's an internship, a volunteer position, or a paid position. So your ability to start working is determined by when you're able to find an employer, but note that you cannot start working before you graduate. So this has to do with the F1 visa limitations and some of what Alice was discussing. You cannot work outside of your school prior to your graduation, and you cannot work before your authorization. So if you find an employer, but you haven't received your authorization yet, you will need to wait until you receive your OPT authorization before you can begin working. That's very important. So those are some of the when questions. If we move on to the next slide. Your where questions is the kind of work you could potentially do. So it doesn't need to be within your practice area, what you specialized in. You could specialize in business law and do your OPT in an NGO that has absolutely nothing to do with what you studied. It just has to be within your field, within the legal field. So it can be paid, unpaid, full-time or part-time, but you need to then be working a minimum of 20 hours under the OPT rules. And you can work with more than one employer. Again, this is because your OPT is sponsored by your school and not by the employer. So you can take multiple short contracts, short-term positions with different employers over the course of that year that you're working under your OPT to get a variety of experience and meet a number of different people. So you can work within any location across the US. You do not need to do your OPT in the same state that you did your LL.M degree in. You can go to a different part of the country after you graduate. And then the kinds of work that students have done on their OPT, work that we've seen our students from UCLA get involved in. There's a lot of involvement in nonprofits, small and medium-sized law practices, sometimes occasionally larger firms, and then also research fellowships, either with research institutes or universities, potentially the one you studied with, potentially a completely different university. So there are a variety of there's a variety of work that you could potentially be involved in once you graduate. Next slide. So how some of the most important things to think about. You have to be very self-motivated. This is really important that you care about it and that you're going to go in there and you're going to invest your energy in making this happen. You have to own the search. So I mentioned on day one, you want to get in contact with your career service office or your Office of Graduate Studies, whatever, wherever your career advisors are situated within the LLM program at your school. You want to get in touch with them from day one because they have resources about what your CV should look like, what your cover letter should look like, your approach to interviewing, your approach to networking, what kind of positions you could potentially secure, when you are likely to be able to apply for those positions. So this is really important. If you want the best chance possible to secure an OPT placement post-graduation, you want to make sure you get everything right that you can, like making sure that your resume is correctly formatted and that your cover letter is correctly written, correctly formatted. So then that's everything you can do that you need to put in all that effort, be really motivated. And then on top of that, there's an element of luck. So taking the time to network and meeting people, but you don't want to make mistakes that are easily avoided by not speaking with your Office of Career Services. So other things that you can invest in, things that you can do whilst you're studying, is making use of externships, internships. The kind of experiential learning that Sarah was discussing is an amazing starting point to meet potential post-graduation employers or to plug you into a network of practitioners that you could potentially access to take up OPT employment. You want to be involved in the on-campus programming and events that also Sarah was discussing, Sarah from UNLV. So when practitioners are coming to campus for conferences, for talks, for industry discussions, that's an opportunity for you to meet with people, to extend your hands, say hello, get to know their work, and potentially be able to reach out to them later when you're looking for your OPT employment. So you want to be as involved as possible. Anything that happens on campus is a networking opportunity. You have no idea the people that you're going to meet and where they can take you post-graduation. And again, go to career services. Please, please, please go to career services. They will do all the nuts and bolts stuff, but then they will also have like interview opportunities. Your school might participate in the New York International Law interview program. Your school might put on its own programming. So at UCLA, we have UCLA an interview program as well for our LLM students where alums come and do interviews. So be involved in everything that you can in order to have your greatest chance of success in securing some kind of practical experience post-graduation. So in case I haven't stressed it enough, you got to network, most important. And yes, I believe that is all from me. My last slide. Happy to discuss this further in the Zoom room. Oh dear, my links are completely invisible, but that's fine. So yeah, thank you so much. I believe I am last on the lineup, so I will hand it back to Juan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. That was such a great presentation. Thank you for putting this together and offering potential applicants with this comprehensive information regarding the differences between LLMs and JDs and how to apply to either or both. So thank you so much. Let me see the chat. There was one question regarding OPT length and the possibility of extending OPT. Would anybody like to take that question?
Thanks for the question. The OPT is 12 months. So there's no possibility of extension. It doesn't work like the H-1B where there's rounds where you can extend it post that. It's 1 year fixed amount of time.
Thank you, Nicole. So I don't see any more questions in the chat, but I want to make sure to emphasize that each of the representatives will be offering individualized Zoom room sessions. Please make sure to copy and paste the links that are already in the chat in case you are interested in joining those sessions and continuing the conversation with a particular school. So again, all of those links are in the chat, okay? And if I'll be around 5 to 10 minutes here with this Zoom session open, in case you haven't copied the links yet. But I think that's it for now, unless any of the representatives would like to say something else or any comments, any final words. Okay. All right. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Thank you for participating in the LLM webinar series. So again, make sure you copy the links if you're interested in talking to any of the representatives that have presented today. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Juan, for arranging this.
My pleasure, John. It's very
Yeah.
nice to meet you. Thank you so
Likewise.
much.
Mucho gusto.
Same here.
Yeah, te mandé en el chat un link porque Temple tenemos una colaboración con la Academia de Litigación en Chile y ofrecemos capacitaciones para abogados para aprender las destrezas de defensa en juicio. Y hay muchos abogados que son peruanos.
Oh.
Sí,
perfecto.
porque están pensando entiendo que tal vez el sistema judicial de Perú está cambiando y que necesitan usar más prueba en las cortes y tal vez van a implementar un sistema de jurados. Y los abogados me han dicho que tienen interés